welcome back to Big LEZ'S League. Now, you're probably wondering, why are we seeing Big LEZ'S ugly mug on a YouTube screen? Now, we thought we'd do a little bit of a special one this week, going through the Titans season. We're also going to be going through the Dolphins and the Manly Seagulls a little bit later on my own, but I thought to go through the Titans, I can't really go through the Titans and not have a little bit of Titans bias, a little bit of spice to the podcast without getting my main man in BKR Sport, Blaze himself, onto the podcast as well. How you doing, brother? It's been a while.
It's been a while, man. Been cracking on. It's been a long year, but a good year, building year. And, it's not biased, man. It's just facts with me. The Titans are the greatest team that ever existed. So, the sooner the people come to understand that, the better.
Mate, listen, you've had a pretty shocking grand final loss as well on your hands over the past few days. Not only did your team not get into the top 8 this year in the men's competition, but the girls were just unlucky. It was a great game, though. I will give them that. It was a fantastic game of football, the Knights and the Titans.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely, just to obviously hit back at that little bit of a shot there. You are a Rabbitohs fan, so I don't know how much I'd be talking too much after the season that's just gone by. But yeah, look, obviously the men's, we didn't do too well. It wasn't, we had a lot that went on, and we'll talk about it obviously today. But, the women's, regardless, that was our first ever grand final in any professional sport in the Gold Coast. So very proud of them. They were up until the last 10 minutes of the game, and, it's just Tamika Upton. She's just fantastic there for the Newcastle Knights. So no, very proud of the women. Maybe not so much of the men, but I'm proud of the direction that we're going in.
Yeah, totally. And we'll talk about that. And obviously some of the guys that are coming in next year as well. I mean, you got to be happy about the big man, Keenan Palasia from the Brisbane Broncos coming over. I mean, a guy with a massive motor. He's come in for Brisbane before and played 50+ minutes as well. So talk to us about Keenan Palasia. What excites you about him coming over to the Titans outfit?
Yeah, the crazy thing is that kind of going into this year, and I do a podcast with Clarkie's Rugby League column every week for the Gold Coast Titans. And, at the beginning, we thought that Palasia was going to come in and be more of a depth role and be someone who would just come in and have to fight alongside guys like Cleese Haas now and Chrissy Randall and all that type of stuff. But we never thought that he was we didn't until recently think he was going to get into the 17 with the emergence of a couple of our guys that we've got this year. But his final series has been incredible. I think he's gotten over 150 meters in every single game that he's played towards the back end of the year. So really impressed with that. Obviously, he was a Justin Holbrook signing, and we've got Desi Hasler coming in next year. So it does come down to what Desi Hasler thinks. But yeah, really excited from what Keenan can do, because now he's got that finals experience. He's got a grand final to his name as well. And yeah, obviously it's really good signs there with another really great forward, because our forward pack is amazing as it is.
Yeah, I mean, having guys like Tino and Mo Fodawaker as well, killing it at the moment in the middle. You've got a sensational forward pack, and Keenan coming off the bench, it just adds to that as well. Now, a guy that's not really a signing, but he has been out all year with injury, Bo Firma. I think a lot of people are forgetting he's coming back into this side next year as well. He was in incredible form before he got injured. Talk to me about the impact of Bo Firma coming back into this side. I think he's going to be amazing as well.
Yeah, Bowie's amazing, man. Bowie was actually, before he got his, I think it was an ACL or something around that. I think it was an ACL. But before he went down injured, people were talking about him getting into the Origin arena and playing for Queensland this year. Because I think he was on the extended reserves for Queensland last year. And he was our best player last year. Despite it being a awful year, he was our best player. And it would have been amazing to see him and David Fafita going together, because honestly, you look at the Queensland side, the forwards, Moaki Fodawaker and Tina Fa'asuamaleaui, that's two of our boys right there. And then you could, obviously, Dave Fafita as well. And then you potentially could have added in Bowie Firma. So our entire forward pack could have been out with Queensland this year. And that just shows that there is the quality there. We just need to piece it all together. But Bowie Firma, running alongside Dave Fafita down the back row for 2024 is going to be absolutely immense. And, he's come back from the exact same injury beforehand. The Titans have actually been documenting throughout the year his return and getting through it. And I spoke to Bowie earlier this year multiple times, and he said if there was footy in November, I'd be playing. But obviously, there is no footy in November. So, yeah, really excited for what he can produce. And people are forgetting about him. They are sleeping on him. And he knows how to come back from that injury, man. So I'm really excited.
And it is a sensational forward pack, again, that you're building. We'll talk about that at length in a little bit. You are losing a little bit of depth in the hooking position, but you've got a lot of hookers. You've had a lot of hookers this season. Cruz Leeming obviously goes back to Wigan. But you've got a number of sensational hookers, obviously, in Sam Verrills, Obviously in Chrissy Randall as well. If you had to gun to head with all the hookers that you've got this year, if you had to pick one to start going into 2024, based off the footy we've seen this year, are you picking Verrills or are you picking Randall?
Oh, 100% of the time, I'm picking Sam Verrills because I think that Chris Randall is one of the best utility forwards that I've seen across the competition. Not only can he play hooker, but he can also play front row. He can play back row and he can play 13. This guy, literally, you can throw him anywhere in the forwards, and he has been one of our best players this season. I think he received the coaches award at our Titans Awards night, the Paul Broughton, the other week that we were at. So yeah, he's an incredible player, man. But obviously Sam Verrills is also one of the most underrated hookers in the comp. It's just that unfortunately he has got that little bit of an injury-prone curse that seems to follow him through his career. I genuinely believe that when Sam Verrills is on the field, he's a top 5 hooker in the game. I think he's extremely underrated. And I thought he was extremely underrated at the Roosters, but it's just, again, those injuries kept haunting him. So, look, Sam Verrills starts, Chris Randall off the bench, if he doesn't need to come on for the 9, well, then you chuck him into the forwards, anywhere in the forwards, and he just is a tackle bot, man. Absolute tackle bot.
Yeah, he's a weapon in defense. I think he averaged over 30 tackles this season as well, maybe even more than that. I think he was immaculate in defense. And I think when you credit the Titans from something this year, you got to credit the forwards. But I think defensively in the forward pack, you guys were very solid. Yes, obviously, there were some times in some pretty tight games, where in the second half, the defense would sort of slip off a little bit and, teams would, I guess, rattle you.
Say it how it is, man. Just say it how it is. The first half of the season was just the most awful time in the history of any sporting franchise because at halftime we were undefeated until I think round 16, 17 in the first half. And oh, jeez, you get going. I'm sorry, but damn, yeah, that was a hard first half of the year.
Yeah, but I think at the back end of the year, though, your defense, it definitely improved a lot. I think that was one thing that I sort of had in my notes here. Towards the back end of the year, you guys, it's almost like you learnt from the mistakes at the start of the year and you were slowly growing. And I think with the forward pack you've got next year, you could really be dangerous. I don't know, and it'll probably hurt you to say this a little bit. I don't know if it'll be top 8, but I think you'll definitely improve from here. I think there's definitely improvement coming with the forward pack you've got. You definitely have the potential to beat a top side. And we've seen that, only 2 years ago, you were just made the 8 as well. But yeah, look, I mean, it's looking up from here. It really is. One of the issues I have for the Titans, I think going into next year is the spine. You've got AJ Brimson, you've got Jaden Campbell and Keanu Keeney, who came pretty much out of nowhere for me. I mean, we saw his Queensland Cup highlights and we knew that he was going to be a first grader, but coming in for the last few rounds of the competition, he's been electric. Now, there's obviously talk AJ goes to center. How are you structuring, if you're Desi Hasler going into 2024, you're picking a lineup for the round 1 of next season, how's your spine looking?
Yeah, well, that fullback conundrum has been a conundrum since before. Obviously, the emergence of Keanu Kenny. Now, obviously, I knew Keanu beforehand, but, that Jaden Campbell, AJ Brimson thing has been going on since last year, and for a little bit now, where we really don't know because you'll see AJ be out injured or whatnot and JC get his crack and then he'll absolutely kill it. And then, JC will go back to the 14 and AJ will come back in and kill it as the fullback there. And throughout JC's time, everyone's like, oh no, JC has to be fullback. He has to be fullback. And then when AJ comes back, those same people will go and say, AJ has to be fullback. So it's really confusing. Look, Keanu's a good friend of mine. I love Keanu. He is a very patient boy. He's a very patient man. He's just out of high school. He's just got a name locked in a spot for the New Zealand rugby league team in the Pacific Championships coming up, which is really exciting there for an 18-year-old bloke, man. It's just, for him, it's just a dream to be here. And I know that he's humble enough and patient enough to wait out his opportunity. He loves the Gold Coast. He's from here, so he really cracks on with it. If I was to choose a fullback, I think that you're probably, oh man, it's so hard because I know the other position is what I'm going to select. And that's why I'm taking a little bit long with this one. I think that if I'm Desi, because I think that Shuppy could actually improve drastically on a Desi. So the only person that could be coming in to the center, obviously Brimo to go to center, you'd have to probably get rid of Shuppy and put him into reserves for Tweed, where he's actually been playing a lot of back row for Tweed at Seagulls. I probably would put JC fullback, AJ into the centers if you put a gun to my head. But I do think that Desi will probably still go with the 14 of JC, AJ into the 1 and implement JC a lot more than what Justin Holbrook was utilizing him for, because he would come on with like 5 minutes to go and that was it. So gun to head, I personally have JC fullback, AJ center, and then obviously Foz in 6, Tanner Boy 7, and then 9 Tommy Verrills. But obviously Tommy Weaver is coming through the system as well, which is exciting.
Yeah, well, I was going to bring that up because not only is the fullback spot a conundrum, but the 7 is as well. I mean, Tommy Weaver's impressed me. Those first 2 weeks he came in, you couldn't have had a tougher first 2 weeks in first grade. He goes up against Penrith, and then he goes up against the Melbourne Storm. And in the first half of that Melbourne Storm game, you looked like you were going to win it. The first half of the Penrith game, you looked like you were going to win it as well. The forwards were humming, and he was just off the back of that creating set after set after set. For you guys as well. You were looking really impressive. You were the ones that scored the first try in the Penrith game as well. I mean, are you picking a guy like Tom Weaver at 7? Are you really picking Tanner Boyd at 7? Because I think that Tanner Boyd, the better footy that I've seen from him when he's played for the Titans has actually been at 9. So I'd even consider having Tanner at 14 and Tommy Weaver to start the year. What are your thoughts on that one?
So it is a good question. I think that for me, we've got, like, obviously we did lose Cruz Leaming, but Cruz Leaming was only signed because of the injury to Sam Verrill, so that we had a backup of Chris Randall. So, and there's a reason why I'm saying this, because we've already got that kind of depth there in that hooker department, and I don't think that Tanner needs to go there. Now, I think that Tanner actually this year wasn't as bad as a lot of people tried to make out. One, he's a very good conversion kicker, which we don't have outside of him. Tanner doesn't miss. Tanner does not miss. And Tanner has really improved drastically this season comparatively to previous years. And again, another thing that comes down to this team is that we switched coaches halfway through. We had contract dramas. We had the second half fade outs in the first half of the season. There's been a really tumultuous year, but Tanner has actually stayed pretty strong throughout. Now, Tommy Weaver is making a really big name for himself and really trying to get into the team, but I don't think that Desi's going to come in and just blow it all up, because one, Kieran and Tanner are literally best mates off the field. You don't see them stop with each other. They're always with each other. They have a really good rapport with each other, and you'll notice that when they're on the field together, they do actually play pretty well alongside each other, and Foran really does keep Tanner in check, and Tanner also does the same thing with Foz, but ultimately has that utmost respect for Foz as well. So I think that, if we got rid of him after the 1 full year in a tumultuous year, it'd be pretty unfair. So I think that we'd have to wait until at least the first half of the season next year before we even decide to think about putting a brand new, fresh kid in. He did have a tough crack. Obviously, we saw what happened with his face when he came up against the Doggies, and yeah, he still went back out there. It's another tough conundrum that is a good conundrum, but it just comes down to, we've put some faith in Tanner. Tanner hasn't really actually done anything wrong so far. He just hasn't hit the peak that we kind of would like him at yet. But still, there's still so much time there. Or do you go and completely put a fresh face in and start the new, life off with Desi Hasler? But with that being said, Foz is also probably going to be moving on soon. He's getting a bit on, and he'd be okay with me saying that. And Tommy Weaver could come in and play 6 as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm very keen to see what the starting lineup is, but I think if there's anything that I need to pinpoint for you guys going into next year, it's definitely sorting out that spine and even keeping it consistent until the origin period before making any big calls about how, if you're going to change the spine or not. But I'm very impressed with Weaver. I thought that when he came in at the back of the year, I thought he was very impressive. Tanner Boyd was okay. I didn't mind Tanner Boyd. His kicking game was probably what kept Titans in most games, especially at the back end of the year when he was in that side.
Doesn't miss.
Yeah, it doesn't miss, eh? Yeah.
Well, fun fact for you, just to clarify, obviously, does not miss is a thing with my YouTube channel where if Tanner Boyd's making a kick, they're going for a kick, I'll only put in when he gets the kick. So Tanner Boyd has actually never missed a kick or conversion on my channel before. But fun fact, outside of that little thing, he's actually top 3 kickers in the game for conversion rate. I think Nathan Cleary is number 1. I can't remember who's 2, but he was 3rd. He was only 2% behind Nathan Cleary as well. So he's a really good conversion kicker. And to go to his kicking game on the field, his kicking game on the field improved drastically towards the back end of the year.
Yeah, totally. And it takes so much pressure off Kieran Foran as well. And Kieran Foran, I thought his ball playing improved this season. It's one of the things that I thought was that stood out for me for Foz. And speaking of Foz, I think that he has done what probably the best thing for Dave Fafita coming over to the Titans, because he's unlocked him 100%. I think Dave Fafita's had his best year. I wouldn't say he's been forced to be involved, but Foran's constantly got him involved. And he's played really well off the back of that. He's taken that on his shoulders and played some really decent footy. He's been really strong. He's taken some really tough carries in big moments. His ball playing has improved. A kicking game we never thought we'd see out of a forward, Dave Fafita. Talk to me about how Foz has really unlocked Dave Fafita, because it has been a massive part of Titans year.
Yeah, it's just the experience factor. Obviously last year, the reason why, because 2021, we made the finals, but it was also kind of debatable because we had a negative 14 points differential. Fair enough. The Knights also, who were in seventh, had like a minus 140 points differential. But the point of the matter is that going to our team, we had no experience going into the next year because we decided that based off of that year, we were going to go full in on the youth. And we went with the fullback was JC, I think it was. The 6 was AJ Brimson. The 7 was Toby Sexton. And then the 9 was Aaron Clark. And as you can see, that spine's completely changed now because it did not work. Toby Sexton is now with the Doggies. I would have loved him to do well with us, but he didn't. AJ Brimson, for me, he's a fullback or a center. I wouldn't put him into the 5'8". And that's the point. We needed an experienced half there, and we had no experienced halves. And that's why we were so down in 2021. And then 2022, we're kind of trying to retinker to get back to a stage where we were prior to that year, where we just had a complete, club collapse, I would personally say. Because last year was way worse, a million times worse than this year. I actually wouldn't even say this year was as bad despite the ladder positioning, because there's a lot of arguments for throughout the year. But Foz coming in has provided that experience. He's provided that guy that knows. He's been with Manly when they've won a premiership. He's been alongside some incredible players. He's got that age to him, and he's got that. He is such a nice guy, Fozza, that he knows how to get to other players and talk to other players without, sounding rough or without sounding rude or being derogatory. He really just gets to the point and knows what he's doing. And I think that Dave has really been able to respect that. He's been able to say, you get into the right position because Foz will direct him there, and has killed it this year, defensively, attacking wise. And that's another thing with Dave as well. Everyone looks at him as like an attacking back rower, but he actually is a really good defensive back rower as well. He's become a more balanced player overall. Last year wasn't as bad statistically as people made out from comparatively to his 2021 form. Yeah, 2021, really good. He scored 17 tries, broke a club record, and then didn't last year. But that was the whole club as a whole. But then this year has gotten enough tries, but also just really focused on that defense and being focused on being a defensive and balanced player. So, yeah, really happy with the progress that Dave's made thanks to Foz.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. I think that Foz has really done a great job to unlock him. And defensively, yes, I agree. He's become way more balanced. And he's improved as a player. I think he was very unlucky not to make the Australian squad. I'm sure you'd be spewing about that one.
Well, Dave, I believe, is injured, but also because I actually spoke to him on Sunday. It was at the grand final, but he's also Tongan.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of he is Tongan, but I think he's made the squad previously, and a lot of people were expecting him to pick Australia over Tonga this season.
There you go. Well, yeah, apparently he's injured. I didn't know this until because I had this question when I saw. So someone actually messaged me saying why unlucky for Dave not to make Australia. So that goes in line with what you're saying, and I didn't even know that. But then when the Tongan team came out, because I was like, oh, he's probably playing for Tonga. When the Tongan team came out, he wasn't there, and I asked one of our membership guys. I asked one of our guys in our team, and they said he was injured. So that would be the reason.
There's a lot of guys injured this season. There's a lot of guys having postseason surgery at the end of the year. There's also a lot of guys chopping and changing as well, I find. We're sort of talking about it a bit on my podcast, but I think Dylan Watene-Zelezniak, before he obviously got ruled out with injury, he was going over to Tonga as well. Obviously, Farmanu Brown going from Samoa to New Zealand as well. It's a lot of guys with a lot of movement, which is cool to see, and it makes, I guess, the game a little bit more interesting over there in the Pacific Championships, and I'm keen to see how that goes as well. But let's go back to the Dolphins before we get too sidetracked. Where do you see the Dolphins placed in 2024?
Where do I see the Dolphins placed?
Sorry, where do you see the Titans placed?
Hopefully 17th, mate, or 16th with the Broncos. No, where do I see the Titans placed? To clarify why I think that we are a top 8 team next year, and I genuinely do believe it. You look through this season, And they didn't actually miss the 8 by a drastic amount, despite the tumultuous season that we've had with the Justin Holbrook sacking, Desi Hasler coming in, Tino and Dave contract issues, everything that happened at the beginning half of the season, having the interim coach, Jimmy Lenihan. We actually were in pretty much every game, besides the Roosters game, maybe at Seabus. We were actually pretty much in every game. You go back and have a look at that Rabbitohs game. We're up at halftime and then completely fall apart. We're up 26-0 against the Dolphins and then fell apart there. We're up against all these other teams, every team. It was incredible what we were doing in the first half, and we just need to translate to the second half. Now, when we saw Justin Holbrook leave and Jimmy Lenihan came in, who's a very similar-minded coach to what Desi Hasler is going to bring, and he's actually staying on at the club with him next season, the defense changed massively, and we actually improved a lot as a team and put more balanced games together. We beat the Broncos at Suncorp Stadium 18-12 the first week afterwards, and really competed with the Warriors, another top 4 team, where we were down 18-6 with into the second half with 35 minutes to go. Actually, we're down 18-6. We had Moeaki Fotuaika sent off since the 17th minute, which was a controversial send-off, and yet we were tied 18-18 with 7 minutes to go there before, obviously, we got too tired and they broke away. We competed with the Storm, competed with the Panthers, and we didn't really get blown out in many games besides that Roosters game. So for me, you're bringing back a guy like Bowie Firma alongside Dave Fafita in the back row. You've got Tino and Moeaki Fotuaika front row with Jimmy Jolliffe off the bench, who is an incredibly underrated player. Sam Verrills hopefully stays healthy. The 13 is a bit of an issue right now. We don't really know what we want to do with our 13, but overall, we have the attack and we have the quality to be in the top 8. You go back and have a look at the Eels. Another 2 points got officially taken off us because of the no penalties calls. The NRL came out and said they were incredibly wrong. There was the Raiders game, the Dave Fafita no try. That would have been a win there. And that's 4 points already, and I can go back through the season. So for me, I genuinely believe under Desi Hasler, we have a fresh coach. I don't think there is a great deal of pressure to get above 6th position. I will probably go between 6th and 8th.
Look, I don't mind that take at all, and I think you got the forward pack to do it. I think if Foz is humming, I think he's going to unlock Dave Fafita. Dave Fafita could be in for a career best year. Bowie Firma coming back as well. In terms of the lock forward position, I'd be looking to go with someone like Aaron Clark. I thought that when he's played 13 this season, I thought he's been really good. So I'd probably go down that direction potentially. But yeah, look, I mean, I don't mind that take. I just don't think with how the comps evened out over the past 2 years, I really don't think that it's going to change too much going into next year. The only change I can really see is that the teams that are going to go really good next year are going to go really good, and everyone else is just going to be even. So I don't think it's really going to change too much. I've got the Titans at between 10th and 12th. I think that's where you guys sit. I think that there's a massive improvement. I think you guys start the year off well as well, depending on what the spine is. And under Desi, I think you guys will go really well as well. But I just don't think that the comp is going to shift too much just with how everything's evened out. And I think we'll see a lot of that going into next year. But
the only thing that I would say in response to that as well, though, is that when you're looking at teams like the Broncos and the Warriors, they've got a lot of question marks actually about next season that people aren't really talking about. So, for example, Adam Reynolds has been incredible. Obviously, he's getting on an age now. The Broncos are starting to figure out whether they want to prioritize re-signing him. He'll be 34 years old next year. So, for the Broncos to be at their very best, we all know that when Reynolds isn't playing well, the Broncos aren't playing well, which is proof in the pudding in that grand final. And they are losing quite a few of their talented players as well. They've gone to the Dolphins or come to the Titans or gone elsewhere. Herbie Farnworth is a huge loss. Keenan Palasia is another loss there. Tommy Flegler, another loss there. So I really don't know how the Broncos are going to go next year. The Panthers, they're going to continue to do what they're doing. But with that being said, they will slowly start to kind of bring themselves back to the competition with the constant player turnover. They're obviously losing a clutch player like Stephen Crichton. They're losing, Spencer Leniu. And although they're small players, it's still like small individual players comparatively to the entire team. They will get brought back down to the pack a little bit more. Can they win again? Absolutely, they can. And then you got to have a look at the Warriors. If Sean Johnson is not doing Sean Johnson things, this was a big year for him. But I thought, and I was saying throughout all my streams this year, if they didn't win it this year, I don't know if I can guarantee them win it again next year. So if I've got those questions about those 3 teams there, I know that I'll have a lot more questions about all the other teams below them. So I think that there definitely could be a few surprise teams that really do improve. And I don't think the Raiders will be where they were. I think they will drop down a lot more. I have no idea how this Sharks team's going to go. Like that Sharks team's all over the shop. Roosters is still 50-50 for me as well. And the Rabbitohs have a lot of pressure with Jason Demetriou and Lachlan Elliott. So again, if I've got those question marks, and yet we've got question marks too for sure, but I definitely could see we jump up quite a bit.
Oh, look, I totally agree, mate. And I think I haven't really thought about it in that light before as well. But we will have to wait and see how the Titans go. As I said, I think 10th to 12th potentially is how I've got them going into next year. But look, I'm happy to be proven wrong, and I'm happy for you to get into my inbox this time next year. Tell me all about it, mate. I'm sure I'll definitely get a text on you from you in 12 months' time. But a pleasure having you on, mate, to talk about the Titans.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Obviously we do what we can. We're a small club with, a really, really great community that is trying to back this club in and support through the hard times. I wouldn't even say that this right now is the hard times, but, we just keep on cracking on, man. I was at every single game, home and away in 2023, and I'll be there again in 2024, and that includes the women's as well. And just before we jump off here, I will say as well, the women's proved by getting to the grand final that there's been a change of mindset and attitude within this club as a whole that we believe we can actually get there. We actually have a genuine belief now that this curse isn't really there anymore, and we have the ability to go all the way. We just need that experience, get a couple of good years under our belt, and genuinely, I believe this team can be a great thing going to the future. So although people can call bias all they like, I'm going to back my team in, and I'll be there every step of the way.
Well, mate, before we head off as well, why don't you promote yourself, Titans Frontline? I know you're doing a lot of work with those guys and your stream as well. Just give yourself a little bit of a rundown. Let the people know from my, audience what you do.
Yeah, so I do game day experience vlogs where I go to every Titans game. I'm on the drums with the Titans Frontline. We've been doing the Titans Frontline it's been going around for 16 years. I've been a part of it for 13 years. We get those vlogs going, get some atmosphere going at Seabury Super Stadium. Plus, I do my best, obviously, at away games. But we also do the streams. So I've got the Pacific Championships coming up. We do live streams on BKR Sport where we sit there with you guys. You guys are coming away in the chat. Bit of banter, bit of fun, bit of obviously commentating the game. And we've got the Pacific Championships, got the NRL. We're going to be doing a bit of NBA as well, cracking on in the off season. So yeah, it should be a good time, and appreciate it as always.
Thanks, mate. You're a legend.
Super. Take care now. Bye-bye then.